You're watching extras from the extension on Eagle Community Television. This show is brought to you by Caraco Implement.
As we get into fall, the weather's getting cooler finally, and we're starting to see our gardens decline a little bit. And I know if you're like me, you get to the end of the season and you kind of get tired of the garden. Maybe you just want to forget it and leave it alone. But this is really an important time to do some things in the garden. One of those is simply garden cleanup. You know, a lot of our plants, the tomatoes may have been diseased. Other plants have lots of insect problems like pumpkins with squash bugs, things like that. It's really important to go ahead and remove all of this out of the garden, discard it, so it's not sitting there all winter long. If you leave this foliage there all winter, those diseased leaves will sit there all winter, and then you'll have just an even better chance of having that disease problem in the spring when you go in to plant new plants. With your pumpkins and your insect issues, you know, if you go ahead and remove all that debris, maybe till the garden, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, that'll help remove some of that habitat. That makes it really easy for those insects to stay nice and cozy in the garden all winter long and then be ready to attack your plants in the spring. So you want to make sure and remove all of these plants, get everything out of the garden if you can, the best you can. When we talk about diseased plants, I get the question oftentimes, is it safe to go ahead and compost this? And for a home gardener, you know, if you have diseased tomato leaves, things like that, the answer is probably no. Most of our home garden compost sites don't get hot enough to take care of that diseased tissue. And so the recommendation is just to simply discard it and get it out of the garden. Now, the other thing to think about this fall is soil preparation. Once you get that garden all cleaned out, it's an excellent time to go ahead and get things ready for next spring. And one of the best ways to do that is to dig with a spade down 6 to 8 inches or so. And the other nice thing about fall is the soil is usually a lot drier than in the springtime. So let's say we get some snow this winter and hopefully it'll give us some moisture. In the springtime, it's a lot more unpredictable as to when you can get out and actually till the garden. And one of the worst things you can do is till soil that's too wet. So fall with that drier soil is a really nice time to go ahead and prepare the soil. You can incorporate organic matter if you need to. Let's say you have really heavy clay soil, adding compost or peat moss, something like that would help loosen up that heavy clay soil. The other nice thing about fall is you don't have to worry too much about getting that real fine tilling done to where it's the consistency that you need to have for planting. But if you have some clumps like we have here, that's okay because that freezing and thawing throughout the winter time will help to break that up. And in the spring, then all you'll need to do is just go through and rake a little bit and then you're ready to plant. If you have a lot of straw, mulch, or maybe some debris on the ground as far as cucumber plants, something like that, you can simply till those in while you're digging, or if you want to use a tiller, that's fine too. One last thing to mention is soil testing. If maybe your garden didn't do as well as you thought it should have this year, or maybe you have some questions about what your nutrient levels are, fall's really a great time to go ahead and have your soil tested. You can do that simply by taking several random samples throughout the garden. Just dig a little hole and then take a slice off of the side of that hole. And go ahead and take about 8 to 10 of those samples throughout your garden, mix them all together in a bucket, and then bring about a pint of that or a little plastic baggie full to the extension office, and we can go ahead and send that off to the K-State Soil Testing Lab to analyze for organic matter, pH, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. If you have questions about preparing your garden for fall or getting that garden ready for next spring, contact your local extension office for more information.
You're watching extras from the extension on Eagle Community Television. This show is brought to you by Caraco Implement.